Hey, this is still video 10, just part 2 of the video since it was cut off due to timing. I left off saying to the mother I couldn't have the kids get infected with COVID, so I sent them to Florida with a person who I thought at that time was a friend. She asked me since I was on mental leave and not working, how are things getting paid? I told her I was blowing through my savings. He refuses to work. And no money was coming from him. I explained to her that he doesn't pay bills. I told her that every bill he claimed to pay was rejected or declined. He was supposed to pay a phone bill with T-Mobile, and he couldn't even manage that small task when T-Mobile disconnected the line and said that tried to pay through the e-payment system. I never trusted him about payment again. He came up with some excuse that he used his uncle's card to pay the bill since the uncle owed him some money for letting him stay with him. Thank God, as I was on medical leave, I paid my apartment 5 months in advance. I definitely couldn't depend on him. The only bill I had was the light bill and my media package that came with the apartment and water bill. I was so tight on money and food that I ended up taking money out of my 401k account just to get me by. When his mom heard he had COVID, she stayed for 1 to 2 days and she returned to South Carolina. I walked her to her car and she told me to be patient with him. She told me that I was good for him and that things would get better. I told her I would try to do better, but that was half the truth. I appreciated the praise. I've never been praised before by anyone. I had never been acknowledged, so that little praise meant a lot to me. Eventually, he got over his COVID and he continued being hopeless around the house. He still refused to work. He refused to clean up. He refused to do anything at all. He just stayed on his phone and continued watching me work, cook, and clean. He contributed to nothing at all. Around that time, I went back to work. I needed to go back to work to keep my bills up. I wasn't fully healed, but I had my kids to think about. He caught an attitude with me because he saw me entertaining other guys. I wasn't hiding it if he could do it. Why couldn't I? He got upset and claimed that he was doing his best to find a job and that I made him feel less of a man by ignoring him. I laughed in his face because I knew he was full of shit. I didn't care about his feelings. I was over it. He ended up pacing around the house mumbling weird words. After 10 minutes of silence, I assumed he left the house. So I went in the kitchen to get me a drink. And there he was laying on the floor as if he had Unilever himself. I saw an empty bottle of Tylenol on the floor. I kicked him to see if he was gone. I even stepped on him and jumped on him like a bounce house. He played the part perfectly. He never moved. I was on the phone with my cousin and she told me to roll him out the door. I called 911 and they asked me what happened. I told them I didn't know I was working. They hooked him up to a machine to check his brain levels and they said everything was normal. Now, I knew this boy would do anything to keep up with his behavior. I told my cousin that this man tried to fake his own death to get sympathy from me. See you next time for part 11.